The first rule Nora Vale received when she entered the Sicilian mansion was simple: do not open the east wing. The second rule was delivered without warmth: do not ask why. And the third rule came from a man whose voice could make armed men lower their eyes. "If you find a locked door," Alessandro Vitale said, standing beneath the cracked marble angels of his ancestral hall, "you walk away." Nora should have listened. By midnight, a storm had swallowed the cliffs outside Villa Vitale. Rain lashed against the windows like thrown glass. The sea below the mansion roared black and endless, smashing itself against the rocks as though trying to climb the mountain and drag the house into the water. Nora stood alone in a corridor that smelled of dust, candle smoke, and old money. Her flashlight trembled slightly in her hand, not because she was afraid of the dark, because behind the warped paneling of the east wing, she could hear something moving. A soft scrape, a hollow thud, then silence. She had spent her life restoring ruined things: Renaissance frames, antique music boxes, war-damaged portraits. Broken objects trusted her. Secrets seemed to find her hands, but this door was different. It was black, taller than the others, sealed with 3 locks, each older than the last. The wood had been scratched near the handle, not from the outside, but from within. Nora's breath caught. No one had used this wing in decades. That was what the housekeeper had whispered when Nora arrived. No maids cleaned it, no guards entered it, no priest blessed it, and Alessandro Vitale never looked at it. Nora raised her flashlight and saw something wedged beneath the threshold, a corner of paper, yellowed with age. She bent down and pulled it free. It was a photograph. A little girl stood in a garden, laughing with her hair blown across her face. She wore a white dress and held a stuffed rabbit by one ear. Behind her, half hidden in shadow, stood a woman whose face had been torn out of the image. On the back, in faded ink, were 4 words: "Forgive me, little star." Nora stared at the handwriting. Her chest tightened. She knew that phrase. Her mother used to say it when Nora was a child. Not often, only in dreams. Only when she woke crying from nightmares, she refused to explain. Little star. Nora's fingers went cold. She should have stepped away. She should have gone downstairs, called the housekeeper, pretended she had found nothing. Instead, she touched the oldest lock. It fell open, not from force, from time. The second lock opened when she pressed the rusted clasp. The third resisted until she used the thin restoration blade she carried in her pocket. She told herself she was only checking for water damage, only preventing further decay, only doing her job. The door opened with a sound like a lung taking its first breath in 30 years. Inside was not treasure, not weapons, not gold. It was a room full of ghosts. Thousands of letters covered the walls, some pinned, some stacked, some tied with ribbon and black thread. Photographs hung from wires. A child's bed sat in the center, beneath a canopy of torn lace. Dust lay thick over dolls, music boxes, silver brushes, tiny shoes, and a cracked porcelain angel. Every object had been preserved. Not abandoned, preserved. Nora stepped inside, unable to breathe. On the far wall were photographs of the same little girl at different ages. A baby wrapped in white, a toddler asleep on a piano bench, a child standing beside a woman whose face had been carefully burned out of every picture. Then Nora saw a name carved into the wooden bed frame: Lucia. Her flashlight slipped in her hand. Behind her, the hallway went suddenly silent. Then a voice came from the doorway. "What did you do?" Nora turned. Alessandro Vitale stood there, in a black suit, rain still shining on his shoulders. 2 guards flanked him, but neither moved. They looked terrified, not of Nora, of him. Alessandro's face had gone bloodless. The man who had welcomed foreign ministers with a blank stare, the man whose name made casino owners, judges, and smugglers tremble, stared into the room as if someone had cut him open. Nora took one step back. "I found a photograph under the door," she whispered. "I thought—" "You thought?" His voice was calm, but the calm was worse than rage. "You were paid to restore paintings, Miss Vale, not resurrect the dead." She should have apologized. Instead, she held up the photograph. Who was she? For 1 second. Something broke behind his eyes. Then it vanished. He stepped into the room and took the photograph from her hand with frightening gentleness. "My sister," he said. Nora looked at the walls, the letters, the bed, the tiny shoes. What happened to her? Alessandro's jaw tightened. "She died." The word did not sound like grief. It sounded rehearsed. Before Nora could ask anything else, an explosion shattered the night. The windows at the end of the corridor burst inward. Glass sprayed across the marble. The guards drew their weapons as red laser dots flickered over the walls. Alessandro moved before Nora understood the danger. He seized her by the waist and dragged her behind him as gunfire tore through the corridor. The locked room filled with thunder. Nora hit the floor beneath him, his body shielding hers, his hand pressed hard against the back of her head. "Do not move," he said against her ear. His voice was still controlled, but his heart was pounding. Outside the room, men shouted in Italian. The mansion alarms screamed. Somewhere below, glass shattered and engines roared across wet gravel. Alessandro lifted his head slightly, his eyes dark and focused. Then he looked down at Nora. For the first time, he did not look like a king. He looked like a man who had just realized that the dead were not the only ones who could be taken from him. "Who knows you opened this door?" he asked. "No one." His gaze sharpened. "Then someone was waiting for you to." The lights died. The mansion fell into darkness, and in the black, Alessandro Vitale wrapped his hand around Nora's wrist and said, "From this moment on, you stay where I can see you." Nora should have hated the command. Instead, with bullets still buried in the wall above her head and the photograph of a dead girl lying between them, she realized something terrifying. The most dangerous man in Sicily was afraid. Not for himself, for her. Nora Vale had arrived in Sicily 3 days earlier, believing the job would save her career. She was 32, respected but not famous, talented but not rich. Museums trusted her hands, private collectors trusted her silence, and wealthy families trusted her ability to make ruined heirlooms look untouched by time. But trust had not paid her father's medical bills. Trust had not kept her Boston studio from drowning in debt. Then came the invitation, a private restoration contract. 6 weeks at Villa Vitale, triple her usual fee. Full discretion required, no photographs, no outside communication about the estate. She almost refused when she saw the name, Vitale. Even in America, she knew what it meant. Luxury hotels, shipping companies, vineyards, charities, political influence, and beneath all of it, whispered in courtrooms and newsrooms, the old world of blood loyalty. Alessandro Vitale was not merely rich. He was feared. But Nora had spent her life around dangerous men disguised as benefactors. Collectors who smiled while hiding stolen art. Museum boards that erased provenance when money demanded it. She had learned to see rot beneath gold leaf. So she took the job. She expected arrogance, maybe intimidation. She did not expect Alessandro himself to meet her at the entrance. He was younger than she imagined, not yet 40, with black hair, severe eyes, and the controlled stillness of a man who never wasted movement. He wore power, like other men wore cologne, quietly, expensively, as if he did not need to prove anything because the world already knew. "Miss Vale," he said. His voice was smooth, low, almost bored. "Mr. Vitale." His eyes moved over her face, not rudely, but carefully, as if comparing her to something he had seen before. "You are smaller than your reputation, and you're more polite than yours." One of the guards behind him stiffened. Alessandro did not smile, but something shifted in his expression, a flicker of interest. "Careful," he said softly. "In this house, honesty can be mistaken for courage. Then I hope your house has good taste." That time, he almost smiled. Almost. He led her through rooms that looked stolen from royal history. Painted ceilings, Venetian mirrors, chandeliers like frozen rain. Marble floors so polished they reflected the storm clouds gathering outside. Yet the beauty felt haunted. Too many closed doors, too many guards, too much silence. The portraits she had been hired to restore belonged to the Vitale family. Generations of men with cold eyes, and women painted as if beauty were a form of captivity. The most damaged portrait was hidden in the main gallery beneath black cloth. When Alessandro revealed it, Nora understood why she had been summoned. It was a portrait of a woman in a dark green dress, standing beside a young boy. The woman's face had been violently scratched away. The boy remained untouched. Nora studied the brushwork. "Who damaged it?" "My uncle says my father did." "Do you believe him?" Alessandro watched her too closely. "I believe men destroy what they cannot possess." Nora glanced at him. "That sounds personal." It was meant to. Their eyes held for a breath too long. The air changed. Then he turned away. "You will restore the woman's face. I'll need reference images." "There are none." "That's impossible. In my family, impossible is usually evidence of murder." That was the first crack in the story. The second came from the housekeeper, Sophia, who brought Nora coffee in the restoration room and whispered, "Do not stay after sunset near the east wing." Nora looked up. "Why?" Sophia's face went pale. "Because the house remembers what men try to forget." The third crack came that night. Nora found Alessandro in the gallery alone, standing before the damaged portrait with a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. "You don't sleep?" she asked from the doorway. "I own too many enemies. And too few pillows?" His eyes slid toward her. "You joke when you are uncomfortable. You stare when you want to avoid answering." Silence. Then he said, "You should be afraid of me." "I am." That answer seemed to surprise him, but not enough to stop talking. "I've learned fear is useful. Silence usually isn't." Alessandro set the glass down. "You restore damaged things, Miss Vale. Tell me, can everything be restored?" Nora looked at the scratched-out woman. "No, some things can only be revealed." His expression hardened. "Then be careful what you reveal." By the time she opened the locked room 2 nights later, Nora understood that Villa Vitale was not a mansion. It was a crime scene with chandeliers. After the attack, Alessandro moved Nora before dawn. Not to the police, not to a hotel, to the heart of his world. A convoy of black SUVs tore away from Villa Vitale through rain and mountain fog. Nora sat beside Alessandro in the back seat, wrapped in his coat, her hands still shaking despite her best efforts to hide it. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "You're bleeding," he said. Nora looked down. A thin cut crossed her palm where glass had sliced her. "It's nothing." He took her hand before she could pull away. His touch was warm, controlled, almost careful. Too careful for a man who gave orders that made armed men obey instantly. From the front seat, his head of security, Matteo, glanced in the mirror and quickly looked away. Alessandro wrapped Nora's palm with a white handkerchief. "You should not have opened that room." You should not have locked away a dead child, like a secret. The SUV went silent. Matteo's hands tightened on the wheel. Alessandro looked at Nora slowly. Any other man might have shouted. He did not. That child was my sister. Then why did opening her room almost get me killed? His eyes darkened. Because someone is afraid of what you found. And are you? He tied the cloth around her palm. Yes? Nora's breath caught. It was not the answer she expected. Outside, Sicily blurred past, in rain-soaked darkness, olive groves, stone walls, distant villages, asleep under storm clouds. Where are you taking me? She asked. A safe house. I didn't agree to that. No. Then stop the car. No. The simplicity of it ignited her anger. You don't get to imprison me, because your family has secrets. Alessandro leaned closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could smell rain and expensive cologne. If I wanted to imprison you, Miss Vale, you would not have a window. Her pulse jumped. Is that supposed to comfort me? It is supposed to clarify the difference. She held his gaze. I'm not one of your men. No, he said quietly. That is becoming a problem. The safe house was hidden beneath a vineyard, overlooking the sea. From the outside, it looked like an old stone farmhouse. Inside, it was steel doors, surveillance walls, medical supplies, weapons cabinets, and luxury disguised as restraint. Nora was given a bedroom with cream walls and barred windows. She noticed the bars immediately. Alessandro noticed her noticing. They are for keeping people out. That's what men always say when they lock women in. For a moment, shame flashed across his face. Then he turned to Matteo. No one enters this property without my permission. No calls, no visitors, no exceptions. And me? Nora asked. Alessandro looked back. You do not leave without me. She laughed once, coldly. There it is. His voice dropped. You were almost killed tonight, because you opened a room that should have stayed sealed. Until I know who gave the order, every road around you is a threat. Then tell me what was in that room. I told you. My sister. No. You told me the safest version. Their eyes locked. He moved closer. You think you want the truth? I know I do. No, Nora. It was the first time he used her first name, and it struck harder than it should have. You want a story that makes sense. Truth rarely does. He left her there. But that night, Nora did not sleep. She watched rain crawl down the window bars, and replayed the moment Alessandro saw the room. His face, his silence, the way the air seemed to leave him. A man like that did not break over an ordinary death. At 2:13 a.m., Nora found the first camera. It was hidden in the corner of the bedroom ceiling. She climbed onto a chair and stared directly into the lens. Then she raised one finger and turned it toward the wall. 3 minutes later, the door opened. Alessandro stood there in rolled-up shirt sleeves. No jacket, no tie. Still controlled. Still dangerous. But tired enough that she could see the man beneath the empire. Are you always this difficult? He asked. Are you always this invasive? The cameras are in every room except the bathroom. That is not the moral defense you think it is. They keep you alive. They keep me watched. His jaw flexed. You were not watched before. That is why they got close enough to shoot at you. Nora stepped down from the chair. Who are they? Alessandro hesitated. That hesitation told her more than an answer. Your family, she said. His eyes sharpened. Careful. It's your uncle, isn't it? He went very still. Nora's breath caught. It is. Alessandro crossed the room in 3 silent steps. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back. My uncle raised me after my parents died. He built half the empire you are so eager to judge. And the other half, I built. At what cost? His gaze dropped to her mouth for one dangerous second before returning to her eyes. More than you can imagine. A charged silence stretched between them. Then Nora whispered, "What happened to Lucia?" His expression closed. "My sister drowned when she was 6. Where? At the cove below the villa. Who found her? My uncle. Did you see her body?" Alessandro's face changed. "Not much. Just enough." "No." Nora's voice softened. "Then, how do you know she died?" The question landed like a blade. Alessandro stepped back. For the first time, he looked less angry than shaken. "Sleep," he said. Then he left. But he did not lock the door. And somehow, that frightened Nora more. By morning, the scandal had already begun. Nora's face appeared on Italian news beside Alessandro's. American art restorer, hidden by Mafia heir after attack at Villa Vitale. The footage showed black SUVs leaving the mansion, her blurred figure beside him, his coat around her shoulders. The implication was obvious. Mistress, witness, hostage, maybe all three. Nora watched the broadcast from the safe house kitchen, while Alessandro spoke in rapid Italian on the phone near the windows. "Your enemies are using me," she said when he ended the call. "Yes, you don't sound surprised. They use anything near me. Then, let me go." His eyes cut to hers. "No." Anger rose in her chest. "You don't own me." "No," he said. "But someone is trying to kill you because of me. Until that stops, your life is my responsibility." That sounds noble when you say it calmly. It is not noble, it is practical. Is that what you call obsession before it becomes personal? His stare hardened. "Do not flatter yourself." The words should not have hurt. They did. Nora looked away first. Alessandro noticed that too. Something flickered in his eyes, but he said nothing. That day, he allowed her into the security room. Not because he trusted her, because she demanded evidence. Screens covered one wall. Feeds from the villa, vineyard, harbor, airport, roads. Men moved through them like chess pieces. On the central table lay the objects recovered from Lucia's room. The photograph Nora found, several letters, a music box, and a silver hairbrush engraved with initials. Land, Villa Vitale. Nora reached for the letters. Matteo blocked her. Alessandro gave him one look. Matteo stepped away. Nora opened the first letter. It was written by a woman named Elena. The handwriting matched the photograph. "My son believes what Marcello tells him because grief has made him obedient. But one day he will ask why no mother was allowed to bury her daughter. One day he will know Lucia did not drown." Nora stopped breathing. Alessandro stood across from her, motionless. She looked up slowly. "Your mother wrote this." His face had turned to stone. "Read the rest." Nora did. Each letter was worse than the last. Elena Vitale had written them over several years, never sending them. She wrote of fear, of being watched, of Marcello controlling the household after Alessandro's father was murdered, of Lucia being taken away by men who claimed they were protecting her, of a child hidden because she carried proof of a forbidden inheritance. And then, one final sentence. "If my little girl lives, she will know the phrase. Forgive me, little star." Nora's hands went cold again. Alessandro saw it. "What?" he asked. Nora folded the letter too carefully. "My mother used to say that." Silence swallowed the room. Matteo looked between them. Alessandro's voice became dangerously quiet. "What did you say?" Nora backed away from the table. "My mother. When I was little, she used that phrase. Your mother's name, Nora Vale. Before marriage." Nora swallowed. "I don't know." Alessandro turned to Matteo. "Find everything. Birth records, adoption records, immigration files, hospital transfers, Boston, New York, Palermo, Naples. Now." Matteo left instantly. Nora shook her head. "No, don't do that." It is already done. You don't get to dig through my life without asking. He stepped toward her. If your mother was connected to Lucia, you are in more danger than I thought. My mother is dead. So is mine, he said coldly. And apparently, dead women still speak. That silenced her. For the next 2 days, Nora remained inside the vineyard safe house, while Alessandro's world tightened around them. Men came and went with files, satellite phones, encrypted tablets. The Vitale Empire moved quietly outside her windows, rearranging itself around one woman and one locked room. Alessandro barely slept. Nora caught glimpses of him in different versions of command. Calm with lawyers, ruthless with captains, terrifying with traitors. He never raised his voice. He did not need to. Men twice his age trembled when he went silent. Yet with Nora, he was different. Not soft. Never soft. But aware. He placed coffee near her without comment, had her cut checked by a doctor but stayed in the doorway as if refusing to admit concern, sent away a guard who spoke to her too sharply, stood outside the room when she cried quietly after reading her mother's old medical records. That night, Nora found him on the terrace, looking out at the sea. "You knew I was crying," she said. "Yes. And you didn't come in?" "No." "Why?" He did not look at her. "Because if I had, I would have touched you." Her heart stopped for a beat. Rain misted the terrace stones. The sea below was black glass. "And that would have been terrible?" she asked. He turned his head. His eyes moved over her face with painful restraint. "For you." Nora should have stepped back. Instead, she stepped closer. "I can decide that." Alessandro's gaze darkened. "No," he said softly. "Not while you are frightened. Not while you are under my roof. Not while every man around me knows I would tear Sicily apart if someone harmed you." The confession hung between them. "Too much. Not enough," Nora whispered. "Why?" His hand lifted slightly, as if he almost touched her cheek. Then he stopped. "Because when you opened that room," he said, "you opened something in me too." A phone rang inside. The moment shattered. Alessandro answered. His face changed. Within minutes, the safe house was moving. Matteo burst in with a tablet. "We found her." Nora stood frozen. "Who?" Matteo looked at Alessandro first, then at Nora. "Villa Vitale did not die at 6. The terrace seemed to tilt beneath Nora's feet. Matteo continued. "She was smuggled out of Sicily under a false identity, later adopted in Massachusetts by a family named Vale." Nora's lips parted. "No." Alessandro did not move. Matteo's voice lowered. Her American name was Marianne Vale. Nora felt the world disappear. Her mother had been Lucia, the missing girl in the photographs, the dead sister of the Mafia Boss standing before her. Alessandro stared at Nora with an expression she could not read. Shock, grief, horror, something dangerously close to tenderness. Nora took one step back. "That means..." She could not finish. Alessandro did. "You are my niece." The word struck like thunder, but even as he said it, something in Matteo's face shifted. A hesitation. Alessandro saw it. "What else?" Matteo swallowed. "The records are incomplete. There is another sealed file. A birth certificate under Nora's name. Father unknown." Nora's chest tightened. Alessandro's voice went flat. "Open it." Matteo did. The screen glowed in the rain. Then even Matteo looked afraid. Her father was listed privately through a protected legal trust. "Name," Alessandro said. Matteo looked at Nora with pity. "Dante Moretti." Alessandro's entire body went still. Nora had never seen hatred become physical before, but in that moment, it moved through him like fire under ice. "Who is Dante Moretti?" she asked. Alessandro did not answer. Matteo did. The head of the rival family that murdered Alessandro's father. Nora could not breathe. She was not just Lucia's daughter. She was the daughter of the enemy. By sunrise, every old alliance in Sicily began to crack. Alessandro withdrew into a silence so cold that even Matteo stopped speaking unless necessary. Nora watched him from across the safe-house dining room as men arrived with maps, bank ledgers, phone transcripts, and names that made everyone else in the room look pale. Dante Moretti, her father, alive, powerful, hidden in the north, a man Nora had never met, whose blood suddenly made her valuable to every enemy Alessandro had. "Say something," she finally demanded. Alessandro stood at the end of the table, both hands braced against the wood. "What would you like me to say? That you don't blame me?" His jaw tightened. "I do not blame children for the sins of fathers. I'm not a child." His eyes lifted. "No, you are not." The way he said it made the room seem smaller. Nora crossed her arms, trying to protect herself from the force of him. "You looked at me like I was poison. I looked at you like I had almost wanted something forbidden before God himself stopped me." The room went silent. Nora's face burned. Matteo suddenly became very interested in the maps. Alessandro turned away first. "We will leave for Palermo tonight. Your father has requested a meeting." "My father doesn't get to request anything from me. He does when he sends proof that your mother may still have been alive 3 years after you believed she died." Nora froze. "What?" Alessandro placed a photograph on the table. It showed Marianne Vale Lucia, older, thinner, standing in a train station with sunglasses covering half her face. The date stamp was impossible. 3 years after the funeral Nora had attended in Boston. Nora stared at the image until her vision blurred. "No. I buried her. You buried a closed casket." Her knees weakened. Alessandro moved instantly, catching the edge of her elbow before she fell. Nora looked up at him. For a second, all the family revelations, bloodlines, and forbidden tension collapsed into something simpler. She was breaking, and he was holding her. Then she pulled away. "Don't." His hand fell. Hurt flashed across his face and vanished. "You think I arranged this? I don't know what to think." "That is wise." "No, it's cruel." Her voice shook. "I came here to restore a portrait. Now my dead mother isn't dead. My father is a mafia boss. And you—" She stopped. His eyes narrowed. "And I?" Nora swallowed hard. "You make me feel safe and trapped at the same time." For once, Alessandro had no answer. That evening, they drove to Palermo in armored SUVs. The city glowed beneath rain and neon. Wet streets reflected gold balconies, cathedral stone, and black cars moving like predators through traffic. Nora sat beside Alessandro again, close enough to feel the heat of his body but separated by everything they now knew. Outside a private hotel, reporters swarmed. The story had exploded globally. American restorer linked to Sicilian mafia bloodline. Vitale boss protects daughter of rival Don. Forbidden alliance or coming war. Flashbulbs erupted as Alessandro stepped from the SUV. He offered Nora his hand. She hesitated. Taking it meant accepting protection. Refusing it meant standing alone in front of wolves. Nora placed her hand in his. The cameras went wild. Alessandro leaned close as they walked. "Keep your eyes forward. I know how to walk. I know." His thumb tightened slightly over her fingers. "But every man watching wants to know if you belong to me." Nora's heart hit hard. "And do I?" His face remained calm for the cameras. "No." Then, lower, almost inaudible. "But I want them afraid to touch you as if you do." Inside the hotel, Dante Moretti waited in a ballroom, emptied of guests. He was older than Alessandro, silver-haired, elegant, with a smile that felt sharpened by decades of survival. He looked at Nora as if he had known her all her life. "My daughter," he said. Nora felt nothing, or maybe too much. "You don't get to call me that." Dante's smile faded just enough. "No, perhaps not yet." Alessandro stood beside her, silent and lethal. Dante looked at him. Vitale, Moretti. The air between them carried generations of blood. Dante turned back to Nora. "Your mother wanted to protect you from this world. Was she alive after Boston?" Dante's gaze softened. "Yes." Nora's voice cracked. "Where is she?" Dante glanced at Alessandro. "That depends on whether he is willing to hear the truth." Alessandro's expression did not change. "Speak." Dante walked to a table and placed a small music box on it. Nora recognized it instantly. The same design as the one in Lucia's room. "When Lucia was taken from Sicily, it was not by enemies," Dante said. "It was by her mother, Elena. She discovered Marcello Vitale had murdered Alessandro's father and planned to use both children as symbols to control the family. Lucia was hidden. Alessandro was left behind because he was already too guarded to reach." Alessandro's face went hard. Dante continued. "Years later, Lucia came to me. Not as an enemy, as a woman trying to expose Marcello. We fell in love. She became pregnant." Nora stopped breathing. Dante looked at her. "You." Alessandro's voice was quiet enough to terrify. "And then? Marcello found her. He arranged a false death in Boston. I believed she was gone. Nora was hidden with relatives. Years later, I learned Lucia survived." Nora gripped the back of a chair. "Where is she now?" Dante's eyes darkened. "In Marcello's custody." The ballroom fell silent. Alessandro took one slow step forward. "You knew my mother's daughter was alive. You knew my sister was alive. And you said nothing." "I had no proof until recently." "You had a daughter," Alessandro said. "That was proof enough." Dante's composure cracked. "And you had an empire built on Marcello's lies. Would you have believed me?" Alessandro did not answer, because the truth was worse than anger. Maybe he would not have. Suddenly, the ballroom lights flickered. Matteo's voice came through Alessandro's earpiece. "Ambush. North entrance. Move now." The first shot shattered the chandelier. Glass rained down like diamonds. Alessandro pulled Nora into his arms and turned his body over hers as the ballroom erupted. Men rushed through side doors. Dante's guards returned fire. Guests screamed from the lobby beyond. Nora heard marble breaking. Engines outside. The terrifying choreography of men who had expected peace and found war. Alessandro dragged her behind a column. "Stay down. This time." Nora grabbed his wrist. "My mother is alive." His eyes locked on hers. "Then I will bring her back. You don't even know if it's true. I know what it is to be denied the dead." His voice dropped. "I will not let them deny you the living." A guard shouted from the balcony. Alessandro turned, fired once, and the threat disappeared from view. Nora flinched. He saw it. Something in him tightened with regret. But there was no time for apology. Dante reached them, blood on his collar, but still standing. "Marcello's men," he said. Alessandro's face became terrifyingly calm. "Then the war has already begun." He looked at Nora. "You have two choices. Go with your father, under Moretti protection, or stay with me." Dante stiffened. Nora looked between them. Her father by blood, the man who terrified her, the man who had shielded her with his own body twice, the man whose empire might be the cage around her mother. Nora whispered, "If I go with you, will you lie to me?" Alessandro's answer came without hesitation. "Yes." Her eyes widened. "To protect you," he said. "To control the situation. To keep you alive. I will be tempted every minute." "That's not comforting." "No. It is honest. And if I ask you not to?" His Chasa held hers. Then I will try. Outside, sirens wailed. Nora made the choice that changed everything. I'm staying with you for one brief second. Alessandro looked as if that decision hurt him. Then he nodded. Then God help anyone who tries to take you. The war began in whispers before it reached the streets. Bank accounts froze. Judges vanished from public view. Ships changed routes at midnight. Men who had sworn loyalty to Alessandro suddenly stopped answering calls. Marcello Vitale had not merely lied. He had prepared for the day the lie would be uncovered. By opening Lucia's room, Nora had triggered a chain hidden under 30 years of power. Every secret Alessandro's empire was built upon began turning against him. At the center of it all was one truth. If Lucia lived, Marcello was exposed. If Nora was Lucia's daughter, she had a claim not just to blood, but to inheritance, documents, offshore trusts, and legitimacy that could tear both Vitale and Moretti families apart. Alessandro took Nora to a hidden safe house beneath an abandoned church outside Palermo. The church had no congregation anymore. Its saints were cracked. Its candles burned before bulletproof doors. Beneath the altar, an elevator descended into a bunker filled with screens, maps, and men who moved like shadows. Nora should have felt imprisoned. Instead, she felt the world narrowing around one impossible question. Was her mother alive? That night, she found Alessandro in the old sanctuary above, standing beneath a broken stained glass window. Moonlight cut across his face in blue and red fragments. You grew up believing your sister died, Nora said. He did not turn. Yes. And your uncle used that grief to control you. Yes. Do you hate me for being her daughter? That made him turn. His expression was fierce. No, you hate my father. Yes. You hate what I am. I hate what wanting to protect you has revealed about me. Nora's breath caught. He moved closer. Before you, I understood my life, enemies, loyalty, consequence. Every emotion was useful or buried. Then you opened a door, and suddenly my dead sister has your eyes. My enemy has your blood. My uncle has my mother's sins in a room. And you. He stopped, Nora whispered. And me? His hand lifted toward her face. This time, he did not touch. You are the only thing I cannot categorize. The silence between them became unbearable. Nora stepped closer. Maybe that's because I'm not a weapon. No, he said. You are worse. How? His eyes dropped to her lips. A weakness. Footsteps sounded below. They separated instantly. Matteo appeared. We found Marcello's holding property. Nora turned. My mother? Possibly. Alessandro's face hardened back into command. Where? A private hospital outside Catania. Officially closed after a fire 10 years ago. Unofficially still funded through Vitale accounts. Nora's stomach turned. Hospital? Matteo nodded. He may have kept her there under medical custody. Nora looked at Alessandro. He looked murderous, but beneath it, she saw guilt. You didn't know, she said. No, but it was your money. His face changed, as if she had struck him. Yes, the word was quiet. Brutal. Nora regretted it instantly. But the truth stood between them. Alessandro turned away. We leave in 1 hour. The rescue should have been simple. It was not. The hospital sat on a hillside, under heavy fog, surrounded by cypress trees and rusted gates. Alessandro's men cut power. Matteo disabled external cameras. Nora waited in the back of an SUV, wearing a bulletproof vest beneath Alessandro's coat, hating every second of being left behind. Then she heard a woman scream through the comms. Not fear, recognition. Nora opened the SUV door. A guard blocked her. Miss Vale, no. She did not argue. She grabbed the medical kit beside her and ran. Inside, the hospital was a nightmare of white tiles, flickering emergency lights, and abandoned wards repurposed into a private prison. Alessandro's men moved room by room. No unnecessary violence. No shouting. Just controlled force. Nora found Alessandro at the end of a corridor, frozen outside a room. Inside sat a woman in a wheelchair, thin. Silver streaks in her dark hair, eyes too familiar to be mistaken. Nora stopped breathing. "Mom?" The woman turned. For a moment, there was no recognition. Then her lips trembled. "Little Star?" Nora broke. She ran to her. Alessandro stood in the doorway, unable to move, watching his dead sister touch her daughter's face after years stolen from them both. Villa Vitale. Alive. Broken by drugs, isolation, and lies. But alive. She looked past Nora and saw Alessandro. Her hand flew to her mouth. Sandro? No one called him that. No one alive. Alessandro's face cracked open. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just one silent fracture. He stepped into the room as if approaching a ghost. Lucia reached for him. "You were so little," she whispered. "I tried to come back." Alessandro knelt before her wheelchair. The most feared man in the Mediterranean bowed his head into his sister's lap. Nora watched his shoulders shake once. Only once. Then alarms erupted. Marcello had expected them. The hospital became a battlefield. Alessandro rose transformed. The grief vanished behind lethal control. "Take them out," he ordered. Matteo grabbed Lucia's wheelchair. Nora pushed from behind as they moved through smoke-filled corridors toward the rear exit. Then Marcello appeared at the far end of the hall, an old man in an immaculate suit, silver cane in one hand, pistol in the other. He looked almost disappointed. "Alessandro," he said, "you always were sentimental beneath all that discipline." Alessandro stepped in front of Nora and Lucia. "You kept my sister in a cage. I kept your empire alive. You murdered my father. I removed weakness. You lied to me. I made you." Marcello's eyes moved to Nora, and she unmade you. Alessandro's voice became deadly soft. "Look at her again, and it will be the last thing you do." Marcello smiled. "There he is. The boy who would burn the world for a woman." "No," Alessandro said. "For the truth." Marcello raised the gun. Nora saw it before anyone else. She shoved Lucia's wheelchair hard to the side. The shot struck the wall, where her mother had been. Alessandro moved like a storm. What followed was fast, brutal, and blurred by smoke. Matteo's men surged forward. Marcello disappeared behind retreating guards. Fire spread from a side corridor. Sprinklers burst overhead, raining cold water over blood, ash, and shattered glass. Alessandro grabbed Nora. "Are you hit?" "No." He scanned her face, her body, her hands, frantic beneath control. "I'm okay," she said. He did not seem to believe her until his hands closed around her shoulders. For 1 second, in the burning hospital, with sirens screaming and enemies closing in, Alessandro pressed his forehead to hers. "Do not do that again," he whispered. "Save my mother. Risk yourself where I cannot reach you." Nora looked at him through smoke and rain from the sprinklers. "You can't protect me from being human." His eyes shut briefly. "No, but I can hate it." They escaped as dawn broke red over the hills. Behind them, the hospital burned. In the SUV, Lucia slept under blankets, guarded by men who looked at her like a miracle and a threat. Nora sat beside Alessandro, soaked, trembling, alive. He held her injured hand between both of his and said nothing for the entire ride. But he did not let go. Lucia's return destroyed the Vitale empire faster than any police investigation could have. She knew names, Dates, accounts, burial sites, judges, doctors, bankers. Every elegant lie Marcello had used to turn grief into power began unraveling. But Alessandro faced a worse truth. His empire had not merely been infected by his uncle. It had been built through him. His signature funded the hospital where Lucia was imprisoned. His ships moved money that kept Marcello hidden. His authority silenced men who might have spoken. He had been a weapon pointed by a liar. And now, Nora watched him realize it. He withdrew again, not coldly, painfully. He visited Lucia every day at the safe house clinic, but never stayed long. He ordered protection for Nora, but avoided being alone with her. He answered her questions about strategy, but not emotion. The more he felt, the more distance he created. Nora finally confronted him on the rooftop helipad of a private Palermo tower, where helicopters waited beneath a violet sunset. "You're avoiding me. I am keeping you alive. You can do both, in the same room." He looked out over the city. "You should leave Sicily." "No." "Nora, no." His eyes flashed. "This is not courage. This is recklessness. And pushing me away is not protection. It's cowardice." The word hit. Matteo, standing near the stairwell, quietly disappeared. Alessandro turned slowly. "Be careful." "No. I'm tired of being careful with your pain while you weaponize mine." His expression hardened, but she kept going. "You don't get to decide I'm safer without you because you're scared of wanting me. You don't get to look at me like I'm the only light in a house full of ghosts and then punish me for shining." His control cracked. "You are my enemy's daughter. I'm my mother's daughter. You are leverage against me. I'm a person. You are the one thing Marcello knows I would trade everything for." The confession exploded between them. Nora went still. Alessandro looked as if he regretted it immediately. Wind whipped her hair across her face. "You would?" she whispered. His voice dropped. "I already have." Before she could answer, his phone rang. He listened. His face turned to stone. Marcello had taken Dante Moretti, and he wanted a trade. Dante for Lucia, father for mother, blood for blood. Nora knew Alessandro expected her to beg for Dante's life, to demand he save the father she had just discovered, but all she felt was horror. Not love, not loyalty, just the terrible knowledge that every parent in her life had been turned into a bargaining chip. "Where?" Alessandro asked. Matteo answered through the phone. "The old Vitale, Casino in Taormina." Alessandro ended the call. Nora looked at him. "You're not trading my mother." "No. You're not letting my father die either." His jaw tightened. "You ask impossible things." "No," she said. "I ask you not to become Marcello." That was the line, the final blade. Alessandro looked away. Then he nodded once. "Prepare the cars." The old casino stood above the sea, abandoned since a fire decades earlier. Gold ceilings blackened by smoke, roulette tables covered in dust, chandeliers hanging like broken crowns. Marcello waited in the center beneath a mural of angels falling from heaven. Dante Moretti knelt nearby, bruised but alive. Nora entered beside Alessandro despite his command to stay back. For once, he did not argue. Marcello smiled when he saw them together. How touching. The ruined prince and the girl who opened the grave. Alessandro's men surrounded the casino perimeter. Marcello's men held the balconies. Everyone had weapons. Everyone waited. Marcello lifted his cane toward Nora. "You think you revealed a tragedy. You revealed a succession crisis. With Lucia alive, every Vitale oath collapses. With Nora alive, Moretti blood enters Vitale inheritance. With Alessandro compromised, the empire becomes weak." Alessandro stood still. "Then why not kill us?" Marcello smiled wider. "Because dead martyrs inspire loyalty. Broken kings teach obedience." He gestured. A screen lit behind him. bank, documents, offshore holdings, shipping routes, judge payments, hospital records. Every crime connected to Alessandro's empire. Marcello said, "Step down publicly tonight. Transfer control to me. Confess to enough to disappear forever. In return, Lucia lives. Nora leaves Sicily. Dante returns to his little northern throne." Nora's blood went cold. Alessandro stared at the screen. There it was. The empire. Everything he had inherited. Everything he had built. Everything that had made him feared. And everything that had kept his family trapped. Nora whispered, "Don't." He looked at her. She meant, "Don't sacrifice yourself." But he heard something else. "Don't become the man they made you." Alessandro turned to Marcello. "You want the empire?" Marcello's eyes gleamed. "Yes." Alessandro took a small remote from his pocket. "Then watch it, D." He pressed the button. Every screen in the casino changed. Not to a transfer document, to a live broadcast. News networks. Federal agencies. Financial crimes units. Interpol contacts. Prosecutors. Journalists. All receiving the same files. All at once. Marcello's face drained. Alessandro's voice filled the ruined casino. For 30 years, this family survived on silence. Tonight, silence ends. Phones began ringing across the room. Marcello's men looked at one another, suddenly unsure who would still pay them by morning. "You fool," Marcello hissed. "You destroyed us." Alessandro looked at Nora. "No," he said quietly. "I freed what was left." Marcello snapped. He grabbed Dante's gun from a distracted guard and aimed at Nora. Alessandro moved without hesitation. The shot rang out. Nora felt Alessandro slam into her, driving her to the floor behind a roulette table. For one horrifying second, she thought he had been hit. Then she saw blood on his shoulder. Not fatal, but real. Something inside her broke loose. Sandro, his eyes, found hers. She had never called him that before. The sound changed him. Marcello tried to flee through the rear corridor, but Matteo and Dante cut him off. The last fight of the Vitale Empire ended not with grandeur, but with an old man dragged beneath broken chandeliers as sirens rose from the cliffs below. Alessandro sat against the roulette table, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. Nora knelt before him, shaking. "You idiot," she whispered. His mouth curved faintly. "That is not usually how people address me. You got shot. I noticed. You destroyed your empire. I noticed that too." Tears blurred her eyes. "Why?" He looked at her, as if the answer had become the simplest thing in the world. "Because it was the only rival I could not kill for touching you." Nora stared at him. The casino burned behind them, not in flames but in lights. Sirens, files, arrests, history collapsing. Alessandro lifted his uninjured hand and finally touched her face. No hesitation. No retreat. "You opened the locked room," he said. "I thought it would destroy me." His thumb brushed away a tear. "It did. And then it gave me back something better." "What?" "My choice." Nora leaned into his hand. "And what do you choose?" His eyes held hers. "You. But only if you choose freely. Not because I protected you. Not because you are afraid. Not because this world pushed you into my arms." Nora smiled through tears. "You really do make everything sound like a threat. I'm trying to make it sound like a vow." She kissed him then, in the ruins of a casino, while sirens howled and the sea crashed against the cliffs below. Nora kissed the man who had destroyed his own kingdom, rather than let it become her cage. He kissed her back, with all the restraint he had spent weeks denying, slowly at first, then like a man who had survived every war except tenderness. 6 months later, Villa Vitale no longer belonged to the Mafia. The Italian government seized portions of the estate, Foundations claimed others. The hidden hospital files became evidence. Villa Vitale died awaiting trial, abandoned by the same men who once feared him. Dante Moretti returned north under heavy investigation, but Nora visited him once, not as a daughter forgiving a father, as a woman collecting the missing pages of her life. Lucia recovered slowly. Some days she remembered everything. Some days she forgot Sicily had ever existed, but she lived in sunlight now, in a restored guest house near the sea, where Nora brought her flowers, and Alessandro sat beside her in silence while she told stories from a childhood stolen from them both. As for Alessandro, the world expected him to vanish. Some believed he would rebuild elsewhere. Men like him always did. But Nora found him one morning in the east wing of Villa Vitale, standing outside the once locked room. The door was open now. Sunlight entered for the first time in 30 years. Nora had restored it carefully. Not erased the pain, preserved it honestly. The letters were archived. The photographs cleaned. The child's bed repaired. The scratched walls left untouched. A room of ghosts had become a room of truth. Alessandro wore no suit that day. Just a white shirt, sleeves rolled. His scar visible at the shoulder where Marcello's bullet had struck him. "You're staring," Nora said. He turned. "I do that when I want to avoid answering." She smiled. He had learned her language. "And what question are you avoiding?" He looked back into the room. "Whether I deserve to stand here." Nora walked to him. "You don't earn the right to grieve by being innocent." His eyes softened. No one else would have noticed. She always did. Outside, the Sicilian sea glittered beneath a clean blue sky. No black SUVs filled the drive. No armed men haunted the corridors. The mansion breathed differently now, as if the walls had finally stopped holding their breath. Alessandro took Nora's hand. "Come with me." "Where?" He led her through the garden to the cliffside terrace, where white roses climbed the old stone walls. A table waited there with coffee, restoration sketches, and a small wooden box. Nora looked at it. "What is that?" "A repaired mistake." She opened it. Inside was the porcelain angel from Lucia's room, restored with gold along the cracks in the Japanese style Nora loved. Not hiding the breakage, honoring it. Beneath it lay a key. Nora frowned. "To what?" Alessandro nodded toward the mansion. "The east wing. It's already open." "I know. Then why give me the key?" He stepped closer. "Because nothing in this house stays locked from you again." Nora's throat tightened. "That sounds dangerous." He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. "I am trying to make it sound like devotion." She laughed softly through tears. The feared Mafia Boss of the Mediterranean, the man once colder than marble and sharper than any blade, stood before her with no empire left to command. Only a house full of truth. A sister returned from the dead. A woman who had opened the one door he feared most, and a future he had chosen instead of inherited. Nora looked at the key in her palm, then at him. "You know," she said, "I was only hired to restore a portrait." Alessandro's mouth curved. "And yet, you restored a family." She stepped closer. "No?" I revealed one. His hand settled at her waist, gentle but certain. Below them, waves struck the Sicilian cliffs with the same force as the night she had opened the locked room. But this time, the mansion did not feel haunted. It felt awake. Alessandro lowered his forehead to hers. For once, there were no guards rushing in. No bullet. No secrets between them. Only sunlight. Only breath. Only the quiet miracle of a dangerous man, learning that love did not have to be another form of possession. Nora closed her eyes as he whispered, "Stay." Not an order, not a command, a plea. She smiled against his mouth. I already chose. And when he kissed her beneath the Sicilian sun, the old empire was gone. But something far more powerful had survived. A love born from a locked room, a truth strong enough to burn a kingdom, and a man feared by the world, finally brought to his knees by the woman who dared to open the door.